And I think we're gonna dig right into the carburetor and see how that looks. So like I was saying, this is a Ford 8N tractor, and you can tell because it says 8N right here on the part of the frame. And this one has the hydraulic rear with the PTO, so you can hook up mowers and stuff like that. My dad recently fully restored this tractor, bolt and nut restoration. Every single thing was brand new on Motor Trend on TV. And as you can see, you can tell it used to be very nice, but it is sitting under these trees and it has gotten extremely filthy. I mean, covered in this gross moss stuff. So it has brand new tires and wheels that are somewhat holding air. We might have to add them up a tiny bit, but it should be good for today. There's a brand new carburetor, fully rebuilt motor. But this is one of our main issues here, and it also looks like that might be leaking a tiny bit. So we might seal that up. This is our choke here, I believe. This is our throttle right here. Oil pressure, volts over there. I think this has the 4 or 5 speed manual transmission. You have your 2 brakes right here, this one being your right brake and left brake. Those actually feel pretty good. Like I said, it's fully restored, it's just very dirty. I mean, this entire thing has this weird stuff all over it. So we're gonna get this thing pressure washed if we can get it running. Over here we have 2-year-old battery. Here's the top part of the battery. We'll try to jump it from in here out the top, but we don't know where any of our jump boxes are, so we might just have to charge it. This is where we put our gas in there. We'll check that later. And then this is where the coolant goes for the radiator, I believe, up front here. I know this grill's pretty loose. We can try to get that fixed. It just kind of pops out like that for some reason. And then over here, as you guys can see, very leaky fuel bowl here. So this comes right off the fuel tank. It's leaking as we speak, actually. This is normally clear, so you can see how dirty your fuel is, how much fuel is left. And it is actively leaking and destroying the paint on this new engine block here. So we're gonna have to take this off, unscrew that, clean out this entire thing, and try to get to not leak. And then again, we have to clean our carburetor out. So to take off this carburetor, we need to take off this clamp here, these 2 bolts coming off the intake, and this is also a type of carburetor that sucks the fuel up instead of your typical carburetor, which would sit on top of the motor, which would let the fuel run down. But this one actually sucks the fuel into the motor. So we need to take off our fuel line here, but we got to make sure our gas is turned off. We're going to take off these 2 bolts, this clamp, and then this carb should drop right out, and then it should be pretty simple after that. Just take off our 4 main little screws here to drop the bowl, and then we'll just clean our main jet and all that in here. So I'm going to go grab some tools. We'll take this main one off, the clamp, and then we'll get to work cleaning it. We're just going to get these loose for now, because if I disconnect this now, the carb will be hanging from this clamp and this fuel line. We don't want to put stress on these. So I'm going to go get a flathead screwdriver. We're going to take off this clamp, and then I'll grab a smaller wrench. We'll take off this fuel line. This clamp is actually already pretty loose, so I didn't do that. So that could have been a sign of why I wasn't running, but that also could have been a sign of somebody else trying to work on it. This clamp's probably going to be pretty stuck in there. We'll have to try to wiggle it out once we get the carb loose. Very careful not to strip this fuel line. Our gas is turned off on the other end by our bowl, but there's still going to be quite a bit of gas in this fuel line that might leak out later. There's some gas sitting in there too, we got to keep in mind. So now we're going to continue loosening these, and then our carburetor should mostly just drop right out, and then we can get to cleaning it. This has a nut and a washer, so we're going to keep these on the hood. Alright, we got this side off. Now I'll try to get this clamp popped off and take the carburetor out. Well, I figured the best place to rebuild this carburetor is the dirty hood of the tractor. So we're going to crack these 4 bolts loose. That should take off the carburetor bowl. There's actually some extra fuel in there. I can hear our float moving around, which is good. That means that's not stuck. Ow. Just had my dad help me separate these because they were very stuck. and I believe I have found the issue. There's an insane amount of mushy stuff, water, dirt, chunks of weird stuff in our carburetor bowl here. So I'm going to spray and clean all of this out, but that also tells me that we're going to have to drain our fuel tank because it's full of dirt and water. And then we'll go clean our bowl over there and see if this thing will fire up. But we gotta hurry, it's starting to get dark and we still have a lot of work to do on this thing before to start. So I'm just gonna set a time lapse and get this done, and I'll see you guys once this carburetor is reinstalled and hopefully working. So I just got done putting some fresh gas in it, and I had to let it drain overnight because it can only drain out of this little spigot thing here, and it drains so slow. So I literally had to let it sit overnight draining itself. But now we got our bowl way more clean than it was. You can actually kind of see the gas in there. I got all this sprayed off with carb cleaner to make it look a little better so you can see it more. And then over here we also have the carb. And I forgot to tighten these clamps, so when I was putting fuel in, it started leaking fuel everywhere. But I got those tightened up, there's no more fuel leaking. We have both of our linkages back there and right here hooked up. Our choke is hooked up, as you guys can see it moving down there. And then our throttle is also hooked up right there. So I think now we're gonna see if this battery can even start it, because it basically barely turns over. And if it can, great. But if it can't, we'll just go grab a jump box. Let's make sure we're in neutral before we fire it up. And then I'm gonna go get my dad to watch me when I start this for supervision. And then we'll see if this thing will fire up. So I got a new battery and I got some oil because my dad is just over here and he said we're a little bit low on oil and this battery is just most likely shot because our jump box has over 13 volts and it'll still barely crank over. And then he also said that we need to take off this bowl again because there's some more water in there and we don't want to suck that back into the carb we just cleaned out. So I'm gonna set a time lapse, put some oil in it, clean out this bowl again, swap the battery, and then we'll get him back over here and see if we can get this thing to fire up.
That sounds terrible. That's not going to crank fast enough to...
Got a fresh battery from O'Reilly's. We're gonna get this thing thrown on there, and then we should be able to fire it up. And if it still doesn't want to start, it's most likely our relay that is causing this thing not to fire up. So then we might have to replace that or fix that. But I'll make that thing installed and we'll see if this thing will start. Should we turn the fuel on? Smoke coming out of the spark plugs. That's not good. this thing runs and drives. I'm going to spray it down with some of this citrus all-purpose cleaner. We're going to get this entire thing soaked into stuff because it'll help get all this moss off. And then I'm going to fire up the pressure washer and get to cleaning this thing. Amazing. There is a few spots that the paint started to chip. I noticed it was only on these running boards on both sides that the paint started to chip off. So I didn't want to continue on that and ruin the paint even more. And some of this stuff would not come off no matter what. Not with the spray, not with water or anything. But this thing looks 1,000 times better.